Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special Children's Week chat. I'm Bruce Leslie, President of First Focus on Children. Today, we're happy to celebrate our third annual Children's Week, a week where advocates across the country amplify the issues of most importance to our nation's children. And we also we're working this week on calling on lawmakers to act in the best interest of our nation's kids. Today, we're very happy to welcome an incredible champion for children. In fact, since the creation of our Champions for Children scorecard, Rosa DeLauro, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, has been at the top year after year after year as a perennial champion for our nation's children. So, Congresswoman DeLauro, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I am so delighted to join you, and I thank you for what you do and for the wonderful introduction of this third annual Children's Week, chat week, which is wonderful. And as I understand it, this is an opportunity for you to join members of the Congress with partners and with advocates to be able to discuss the issues that are vital, if you will, to our nation's children. And this is a very unique time. So thank you so much for amplifying the needs of our nation's children. So I'm so proud to join you. I just have to say a word to you, Bruce, and to everyone at First Focus for advocating for children and for families, for putting them front and center in our federal policy. Especially in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic and of the nationwide demonstrations for health, for racial, and for economic justice. First Focus played a crucial role in helping us to secure the funding for the National Academy of Sciences, that panel which studied how we cut child poverty in half. And we did so through the subcommittee that I chair, the Labor, Health, and Human Services and Education Subcommittee, with my colleagues, Barbara Lee and Lucille Roybal-Allard of California. And I might just add, historically, you looked into how the UK cut child poverty in half. So to the activists, to the advocates who are with us today, we salute you for your efforts to increase the investments that the Congress is and must be making in children. All of you know that the Congress is an institution that responds to external pressure. And you are that external pressure, which makes the institution move, pushes the edge of the envelope to do the right thing. And I know that we are going to get into more of the issues, and you know that it is an honor for me to chair this subcommittee, which funds federal programs in health, in labor, and in education, that really focuses on every aspect of the lives of our families today. And I know we're going to get into some more of the specifics in the Q&A period here. But let me mention a couple of things. Children and their families face dire and uncertain times. And for years, you have been working to strengthen the child tax credit, to expand our federal investment in childcare as well. With regard to the child tax credit, and I'm very proud of this, and I would have to mention my former colleague, John Spratt, who was then chair of the Budget Committee, who allowed me the amendment in 2003 for the very first vote on a child tax credit. We were not then in the majority, so we lost it on a party line vote. But we can, and you can, we can claim our roots on the child tax credit back to 2003. And both with the tax credit and with childcare, and focusing on them now is a matter of urgency, and it is a matter of national security. Let me address the child tax credit for a second. The child tax credit is our nation's largest expenditure on children. The latest research indicates that the legislation that I have introduced, along with my colleague, Susan Del Bene. We introduced it to expand and strengthen the child tax credit. The bill is the American Family Act. It would cut child poverty, that rate overall, by 42%, including 52% among Black children. It will cut Black child poverty, the poverty rate, in half, 41% among Hispanic children, and 36% among white children. The data is powerful. And frankly, we ignore it at our peril. And, like early data that we looked at when we understood the ability for children to understand, to learn, that what it meant when we were engaging and trying to look at early childhood education. We began to understand what it meant from 0 to 3 and what learning meant at that age. And that if we don't follow the data and look at what we can do, I think it is more than irresponsible. It is immoral. The Childcare bill. I introduced that legislation just recently with Congressman Bobby Scott. We introduced something called the Childcare is Essential Act to stabilize the child care center and support the providers and the families that rely on them during the pandemic. And my colleague Patty Murray introduced this in the Senate. With regard to childcare in the good times, these small businesses operate on razor-thin margins. And now the COVID-19 pandemic has them facing financial ruin. More than half of childcare programs could close down. If we do not act, it will be disproportionately women and women of color who will suffer. And we need to ensure that parents can go to work and that their children would be safely taken care of. Have them be in a learning environment, not warehoused someplace, which is what we have this all along. These are transformational policies this is the best way that I can put this. This is how you get to the deepest economic and racial inequities in our society today. And with them, children and families, putting them at the forefront, we can expand and we can strengthen the federal social safety net. We can create a social safety net for our times so that all Americans can benefit from that. And I believe that we can and that we will do this together. So I'm going to stop there because I know that you want to get into more depth and in questions and answers. And thank you so much for welcoming me this morning and for fighting alongside of me. I'm proud to fight alongside of you. And as I said, I believe that together we can win. We need to stand strong, and I can be internal pressure. You all are the external pressure, and thank you for it.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I think one of the things I've long admired about you and is your recognition that there's a unique kid angle to kind of almost any issue before us, right? And so, while the president has pretty much ignored that there's a kind of unique issues with kids with respect to COVID, the economic crisis, and certainly blowing off kind of the entire racial justice angle, much less the kid angle. But what you always do is you've always see those spots, and so really understanding the kid angle. And so you didn't talk about this, but I want to applaud you for when we were the first package on COVID. The CARES Act had sort of this disparity between adults and kids. So I want our viewers to know that the first bill had like $1,200 for adults and $500 for kids, but your office, you and your staff were just instrumental in making sure that the HEROES Act has, instead of having that $1,200 to $500 disparity, the HEROES Act is $1,200 for adults and children, and we 100% credit you and your staff for that great work. So, Yeah, so can you talk a little bit about heroes, and then also anything else you want to say about the American Family Act? It is our top priority in this Congress. We really feel, we know that children are 54% more likely to live in poverty. Than adults. We have the highest child poverty rate among all the OECD countries, and your legislation would go, as you pointed out, cut child poverty. Just your bill alone would cut child poverty by 42%. So, yeah, if you want to talk a little bit more about heroes and even the American Family Act.
Well, I appreciate the recognition and for myself and the staff. And I will just say that from the outset, when this occurred and we were, putting together the pieces of the supplemental packages from the very, very outset, that we have been pushing to see that the child tax credit gets included in total, with all of the pieces which allow it to become such a transformative policy, so that and now with the HEROES Act, we can do that. And you all know that the HEROES Act has passed the House. It hasn't yet passed the Senate. So what does that mean about external pressure and where it needs to be directed now so that we can move on this? But as I said in my remarks, child tax credit is our largest expenditure on children. And today, I mean, most kids get the full $2,000 credit. Most African-American kids do not. 53% don't get the full credit. A third of kids are left behind. Why? Because their parents earn too little to get that full credit. Imagine if you earn less, you get smaller credits. So you got half of Hispanic kids left behind. You've got rural families headed by women, minimum wage families. And that's where we look to the American Family Act and look at cutting that child poverty rate in half. What it does, it makes the child tax credit fully refundable so that we include that 1/3 of kids left behind. They get a full credit. It increases the credit to $3,600 for young children under the age of 6. It increases the credit to $3,000 for older children, ages 6 to 17. It is credit. You get the credit in monthly installments. Is anybody out there paying their bills only once a year? No, you pay them on a monthly basis. And it indexes the credit to inflation. And again, we look to make it available to a broad middle class. So again, so proud to partner with Susan DelBene. And in the Senate, you know that Senators Michael Bennet and Sherrod Brown, are dealing with this. You mentioned, look, I was all for the economic impact payments. I was not for treating kids, at $500. They're, it was crazy to do that, but we are dealing with rectifying that. We understand that we know and understand that the AFA is 1 year. We've got strong support from Speaker Pelosi and from the Ways and Means Chairman Neal. So I think with the heft of the data, and that we can base this on. We know what the need is. It's supported again by the data. We have both House and Senate attuned to this, a support on both sides of the Capitol. And with the external support from all of you, we need to push that being done because, again, we need to transform the system.
Yeah.
The impact payments, the direct assistance, the way that we did this in the economic recovery package in 2008, they go away. The child tax credit is there to stay, and we need to build on it. And it is so critical for meeting the needs of families. and it then creates the foundation for the future and getting people out of poverty so that they can be on a path to economic security. And we have the power to do it.
Yep. Yep.
Imagine we have the power to do it. So anyway. No,
absolutely. I would say that I think it's very safe to say that your piece of legislation, and for our viewers, it's HR 1560. The American Family Act of 2019, and call your member of Congress and ask them to support that. And the Senate companion is a bill by Senator Michael Bennet, and it literally, I think it's safe to say that it would be the most transformational piece of legislation in the Congress for our nation's kids, which leads us to another, my second question, which is sort of the other major transformational bill. And childcare has always been essential to families and often not recognized by in the halls of Congress. Except you've always been a huge leader on this, and it's essential now in the wake of COVID. And if we want to, get people back to work at some point, it is essential that we deal with this childcare crisis. And as you said, 50% of the nation's childcare centers are struggling, and you've also been a huge leader on making sure that it's not just warehousing kids, that it's high quality care. And so can you talk to us a little bit more about that legislation and why it is critical for today?
Well, first of all, let me just say, I guess I've been fortunate to grow up in New Haven, Connecticut, where I had the benefit of people who have mentored me, like an Ed Ziegler, and people like a Jim Comer, who have understood and who have been mentors in helping me to understand how important the issue of early childhood education, of childcare, how important these issues are in terms of giving our children the best path forward to really making such a difference in their formative in their formative years. But I on the Child Care is Essential Act, I've partnered with Congressman Bobby Scott, who chairs the Education and Labor Committee, also in the Senate with Senator Patty Murray. And we always have known about the value of child care. We also know how expensive child care is, and we try to work toward making sure that parents have accessible child care, safe child care, and affordable child care. And we have been working on this over the years. And now that we have are looking at the potential collapse of a child care system, I view it as important as we bailed out the airline industry.
Yeah.
Why are we not bailing out the child care industry? Again, transformative. And people are, look at, states are reopening. We're telling people, they can go back. They can go back to work. But what are they going to do with their children? I had a really quite remarkable, this is a sidebar, if you will, Bruce. I had a remarkable conversation until almost 11 o'clock last night with the farm workers in our country, in desperate conditions. They have, and many, as you know, are not eligible for child care.
Yep.
They are leaving their kids home alone, or they are taking them into the fields with them, where they are subjected to the dust and the pesticides, which are toxic. So, and I have talked to my own childcare providers. They're going out of business, and we are not going to allow that to happen, and particularly how they rely on them during this pandemic. So we need to help them out. We need to cover their increased operating costs. They have limited revenue, and when we did the HEROES Act, and I understood the constraints surrounding the HEROES Act. In the earlier supplemental, we did about $3.5 billion for childcare, not nearly enough, and nor is the $7 billion in the HEROES Act. That is not enough to save the child care sector. Now, we've got the Women's Law Center. There again, we have real solid data. Their recent estimates show that it would take at least $9.6 billion per month to keep current child care providers in business during the pandemic. So what we have introduced is a piece of legislation which would be $50 billion for childcare. It's an emergency piece of legislation administered through the Child Care and Development Block Grant. The lead agency in each state, tribe, or territory. Grants would be available to licensed, regulated, registered child care providers that meet state health and safety standards and are currently opened or closed temporarily because of COVID. And that is regardless of whether or not they had received funding through CCDBG. So this would provide opportunities. There's stabilization grants for personnel costs, including premium pay, employee benefits, employee salaries, sanitation and cleaning, protective equipment, training, professional development, as that relates to health and safety practices, fixed costs, mortgage obligations, rent, utilities, insurance, mental health supports for kids and employees, and other areas that would be critical to being able to resume operation. I'll just say this again. We have to regard the child care industry as highly as we regard what happened to the automobile industry when it was going to collapse, as I just said, an airline industry, our small businesses to which we have tried to provide relief and help to. That demonstrates our values as a country of what we hold dear and who we hold dear. And if it cannot be our children, my God, how we have strayed from what the moral imperative of government is all about and what our moral responsibilities are.
Yeah, that you said it all there. I definitely think that we talk a lot about trying to make kids a bigger priority, and they're so often just treated as an afterthought in certain offices, I guess, on the Hill. But we know that you always have made them a priority. And speaking of sort of the kind of the values of our country, as you and I've talked about this before, about the budget is a sort of a reflection of our values in our society, and what where we put our money tells you what we care about. And so you're the chair of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor HHS, which is critically important to kids. So just wanted to ask you, do you anticipate there'll be some room under the budget caps to address some of the growing needs for kids programs, particularly in light of COVID and the recession and racial justice? And I think that the administration has not even acknowledged that there's this economic piece to all of this. We're going to need an economic recovery, and your child care bill is a perfect example of that. Anyway, any thoughts about that?
My Republican colleagues in Michigan, they regard this as a wish list. You've heard them describe the HEROES Act as a wish list. The child tax credit, lifting people out of poverty, child care legislation, with the taking care of our children. If I just might, for an anecdote, two small things. Let me just say here. One, when you talk about the issue of neglect on Capitol Hill, children don't vote, but their families vote. All of the folks listening in here today, when it becomes clear to members of Congress that they are in jeopardy because they are not making sure that children are our priority and they vote, you'd be astounded how quickly they can turn around. I have this phrase that I often use: nothing focuses the mind like a death sentence.
Yeah.
When you take a look at what needs to be done, the other piece is my dear and wonderful colleague, former colleague David Obey, used to chair the Full Appropriations Committee, and he chaired the Labor HHS Subcommittee. He used to comment on members of Congress who would go to a childcare center or who would take a picture with the kids, etc., and so forth, and then they would turn around and vote against the legislation that would benefit children. And what he used to do is to call them out and tell them that they were posing for holy pictures. And if you were from the Catholic faith, you know that there are a lot of holy pictures with the saints and so forth, the people that you prayed to or that you held dear. So we've got a whole lot of people posing for holy pictures. Yeah. Let's undo that and make them spend the money where it's needed. You asked about the subcommittee, and I'm not Pollyanna. The second year of the budget, that means there is less money. But you do deal with priorities, okay? It's a tighter allocation. I am aware of that, which quite frankly is one of the reasons why I dealt with the childcare bill as an emergency designation, because we do have the industry going under, but I could never put in, I couldn't, I can't deal with some of the numbers that I would like to in the appropriations bill. But given that there is a tighter allocation, I am going to be fighting for the highest dollar possible for children's programs, and including measures that advance programs going forward. Obviously I will be fighting for the supplemental bills. We have to get the HEROES bill across the finish line. But the needs of kids are always at the top of my agenda. So whatever we do subsequently, whether it's appropriations or in supplemental bills, that's where my focus will be.
Congresswoman, it's been such a pleasure once again to talk to you. We really appreciate our relationship with you and your office for all the fantastic work you do, and thank you for your time today to help us celebrate Children's Week and to raise awareness about these critically important issues around child poverty, childcare, and you're also, for our viewers, that they should know that you work really hard on healthcare and education and really the full array. You more than almost anybody in Congress really get the sort of full picture of kids. And just, and then another thing to note is it's really hard to be a champion for children on our scorecard as appropriations member because there's only one appropriations bill that comes out. So you get, one hit at it, whereas the authorizing committees get more. And so what that really demonstrates is not only do you work diligently on appropriations and do, amazing work for kids, but also all your work outside the committee and, the American Family Act, perfect example.
Thank you.
And kind of always being there for us. So anyway, I just want to thank you for your continued advocacy on behalf of children, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. And Bruce, and to everyone, every week is Children's Week. Every week. That is, and it's no slogan. It is about our future. And my God, I work in an institution that has the ability to provide for a new future for people and, yes, for children. What an opportunity for me. I'm blessed. And those of us who serve are blessed because the power of this institution is its potential for making opportunity available for people, for changing their lives, and to helping to make a difference. That's what our founding fathers, and I know our mothers would have been there for this. Let's make it a reality. Let's take the power that we have, that I have, that you have, and let's make this institution work in the way it's supposed to. Thank you so much. Be safe, all of you. Take care, and God bless you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Appreciate your time and all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. That does it for this live Children's Week chat. But Children's Week continues later today at 2 p.m. Eastern Time with a panel on tackling child poverty in the wake of our pandemic. We'll talk more about American Family Act during that panel, and it's moderated by our own Carol Baldari and features authors Jeff Madrick and experts from the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. They'll be talking about the report that Congresswoman DeLauro talked about in her opening statement, and the recommendations they make, many including, one of the major recommendations they have is to implement changes to the child tax credit just as the Congresswoman's bill would do. Plus, tomorrow we'll be back at 1 p.m. Eastern Time to chat with Representative Susan DelBene of Washington. She's the co-author of the American Family Act. So I hope you'll join us then. Thank you.